history. But I think that we should be very proud of the fact that those mistakes that the Founding Fathers did make, treating women, such as so many in this room, as second-class citizens, counting minorities as what, 3/5, I think, if my memory serves me correctly, of a human being. And now it was not perfect, but we have made remarkable progress. I think perhaps the only amendment that I would consider, I know every April 15th I do second guess the wisdom of the Congress over 100 years ago at allowing income tax to be put into place. Although I do wonder if it wasn't the Constitution's fault in that regard. It was the Congress that has allowed it to be just so manipulated with all of the special interest breaks. And so I'm not sure if that's in need of a constitutional amendment or just perhaps some Congress members who are willing to say no to all of the special interests, which gets us back, I think, to some of the points that we've made at the beginning of the program.
Thanks, Dave. Josh, how would you change the Constitution?
You know, the Constitution is not perfect. The brilliance of it is that it allows itself to be perfected as we go along. David's right. Minorities, specifically African Americans, women, Native Americans, all that were disenfranchised at one time or another. Some of them very explicitly in the Constitution. The brilliance of the Constitution was that we were able to fix it. That's the incredible part of it. The only part of the Constitution I have a real issue with is part that came very late. That's the 18th Amendment that prohibited the production of all-American sour mash corn whiskey. What were they thinking? I mean, whiskey, bourbon whiskey is American as stars and stripes and apple pie. And Yango, of course, Pottsville, yes. That is my favorite. We always had it. Long before I ever paid for the seat. I wanted to say that it is, we can joke about it, but prohibition, the mindset of prohibition is a little spooky. And we see that with the Second Amendment. We see that with now net neutrality, right? The Obama administration is attempting to take over, crush dissent, stifle free speech. There are many 18th Amendments in one form or another coming down the pipe from a new set, a new generation of prohibitions. Folks, get your guns, stand tall, be strong, ride hard. It's going to be a rough road. These guys, the people in Washington today, they're playing for keeps. You want your country. You want to keep it the way that your ancestors had it, the way you grew up with it. It's going to be an all-hands-on-deck fight. All hands on deck. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Alan, how would you change the Constitution?
Well, I would change the Constitution, not because there are really major weaknesses in it, but because we have a current administration and a mentality that are really undermining what this country was all about at its beginning. So let me suggest some things to you. Irresponsible leaders of both major political parties have made it necessary to amend the Constitution to require that the federal government pass a balanced budget every year. Tragic, but that's what needs to happen. A liberal agenda, the ignoring of clear scientific data, power politics, and the failure to exercise common sense have resulted in millions of babies being legally aborted. There needs to be an amendment to the Constitution affirming the personhood of the unborn child. Irresponsible leaders, an apathetic citizenry, and an ideologically motivated judiciary have made it necessary to amend the Constitution to limit the terms of members of Congress and also federal judges. Our founders envisioned that they would be followed by people of similar conviction, who saw service in government as sacrificial and short-term, not the path to an out-of-touch elitist career where they, the servants, would too often ignore and oppress their masters, the people. A government-controlled system of education and extremist judges have found common ground in undermining the foundations of our civilization. Part of the attack on our culture is an attempt to redefine marriage. Western civilization has always defined marriage as a relationship between one man and one woman. Attempts to broaden that definition must be stopped, and family stability must be ensured. I would advocate an amendment to our Constitution that clearly defines marriage as a relationship between one man and one woman. I also advocate thorough hearings on the fair tax, and if that was examined and found to be sound and equitable and economy expanding, then I would advocate eliminating the 16th Amendment to the Constitution, which now allows Congress to impose an income tax on the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Frank, how might you change the Constitution?
I always get concerned when we talk about tinkering with something that works so well for so long. The unintended consequences of so many of the bills can be so problematic, be it the 18th Amendment and the Prohibition, which was later repealed, when they recognized that all that did was have the unintended consequence of helping to organize crime. To recognize that when you look at the 13th Amendment and the abolition of slavery, the Constitution actually never encouraged slavery. It was because the states had usurped their responsibilities and denied rights to people. That could have been done legislatively and then proven to be constitutional. What I'm in favor of is recognizing that our government was set up to be a balance of power. There's one amendment, the 17th Amendment. When the 17th Amendment was passed, in which it allowed for the direct election of the senators by the states, that appears to be fairly innocuous. But that in and of itself started the entire process of removing from the states their ability to influence what happened at a federal level. They no longer became important. A great deal of the problems that we have today is because a major component, states' rights, have been severely eroded, and you're seeing that in what's happening with the 10th Amendment. I believe right now that our nation needs to live according to a principles basis, a national character. You have to resist the urge to put into a document that's a living, understanding, legislative approach to a document that's intended to be a principle. A principle is something that's tried, true, and stayed forever. When you recognize that framework, you recognize it for providing those principles and guidance for us. If you want to look at other things, you should look at those, I believe, legislative. I do believe in the Defense of Marriage Act. That's already on the books and has not yet been challenged in the Supreme Court. I do believe in the right to life. I also believe as well in the balanced budget amendment, and I personally believe in term limits. Well, let's do one thing. Let's stop giving pensions to elected leaders in D.C., and then they won't have an interest in becoming elected again.
Thank you, Frank. The original 9 questions were all re-advanced by the campaigns, and this is not designed to be a trick question. It's just that recent events, primarily the law passed in Arizona, where they decided to defend their borders because the federal government wasn't defending their borders. The following question has come up, perhaps give us a chance to see where you weigh in on this current event. Will you support a state's rights to protect their citizens if the federal government fails to protect the borders? Josh, your turn to go first.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this doesn't pass the lab test. All of the outcry that's going on, all of the objections people have raised. Well, if the government's role isn't to protect us, then what role does it play? If Arizona has to pick up the pieces of failed federal policy, a federal government unwilling to implement or enforce law, then what role does government have? I mean, I can't figure it out. Well, we know, I mean, I'm saying this rhetorically, we know exactly what's going on. We have liberals in this country who are trying to open our borders up so that they can bring new people in, turn them into liberal Democrats, and vote the rest of